Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. We have once again come to the end of another rotation of the cursed city of Sintranos, and I believe this is rotation 4, so let's talk through my progress for this iteration. We'll come back to hard because that is where I got stuck in a very similar fashion to the previous rotation. It's a little bit of deja vu going on there, but I like to highlight that normal, I guess we can see it in the quests, once again fully completed. I don't really have a problem doing that, you know, being in the end game, so it's not hard for me to do, even all the way through Soulcross. So normal, always complete, and we'll look at the Amius team later. Because I did something interesting this go around, and I do want to talk about that. But in this case, for hard, my goal, as I've always stated, is to try and fully complete the 3 easier sections and then progress as far as possible into Soulcross. And you can see, once again, we are stuck on stage S6, so we did not get to try anything really of the harder stuff. And so we'll talk about why I got stuck there down the road. So starting off with Cobblemarket, this is always the easiest section of it, even on hard. It's not truly that difficult. And the stage I always like to highlight is Bommel. And here you can see that pretty much the same as I usually do, where I just kind of throw in a bunch of champions who can kind of do some damage. In this case, it was HP and support. So I try to run as few champions as possible when I can get away with it. But in this case, Oella's in there because she has increased resistance, which makes it more likely that the Bommel can't strip our buffs off. We have Brogni in the team because he also brings some pretty good buffs that we'd like to stay on to. Hanorok also brings buffs as well as her passive cleanse. Crowdin was there to freeze the bombs. He has negative affinity, but it's good enough just to land the freeze every once in a while on the minion so we just don't die. And then my Celiac Priest Ornn, believe it or not, is our DPS for the comp. I didn't really have, I mean, it's HP and support, so there's no real like damage dealers per se. So him landing some poisons every once in a while was able to take down the boss. So it's always unique. I always like to point it out, you know, sometimes the strategy is a little bit different, and it's not, that one's not necessarily a speed run per se, but it's just enough support to really get the team victory. Moving on to Plagueholme. I almost didn't finish the entirety of Plagueholme. I think it was this Awaken stage. I was short on just souls in order to qualify to start it, but my last Soulstone opening session actually gave me the 3-star upgrade to Basilisk, and so I was able to get that done. You do not want to see how long it took to do it with this team. I greatly underestimated the difficulty or the healing prowess of the waves, but something like 20 minutes was ridiculous. But anyways, the stages I like to usually highlight here are Eternal Dragon and Hard Mode Fire Knight, and this one honestly took me a good while. You can kind of see my rank amongst my clan. Came in second after like a ton of iteration. And the thing I want to highlight here is that Fushan was good just because, one, he has a nice speed aura, which helps. And then if you get lucky on his A1, you can get multiple hits, which helps us take down the shield. Roshguard the tower is in there as well. I did use or take advantage of his block damage to help us take less damage from both of the bosses. But both of them are unbooked, and so they've worked in that purpose. I basically used the minions from the Eternal Dragon to reset the block damage, just to be able to maintain it. Foley is great because he has a quad hitter on the A1, which is, again, really, really good for hitting into the Fire Knight shield. And Ninja is good. He was mainly there because once you deal with Eternal Dragon, then all 3 of his hits go into the shield, which is also helpful. Also, he's just general DPS. But he was mostly there to help me kill the dragon quickly so I could focus on the Fire Knight. And then Ramontu, another clutch thing is that on the A1, he has the chance to lock out the opponent, which basically only works on the Eternal Dragon when it comes to bosses. So that was pretty neat to use him in that way. So kind of delaying the lockout of my team by just constantly spamming A1s. And then obviously Ramontu also has a quad hitter on his A2, which again is helpful for taking down the shield once the dragon was dead. So pretty unique team, I would say, overall. And again, it took a lot of iteration. There's a lot of different champions I tried. I tried Cold Hearts because I do have quad hitters at random on the A1s. I tried like Fenchi, who's generally good for normal Fire Knight, but didn't really do much against hard mode because you kind of need the freezes if you really want to maintain it. This is a team that where I didn't try to maintain or keep the shield down. I just tried to continuously get it back down and then deal damage once it was down. So that was the strategy there. Next up is stage 12, which is Scarab King and spider, or standard spider. So you can see here we kind of have like half and half as far as the team is concerned. We have some HP burn from Artak to kind of deal with the spider side or take advantage of the fact that all the spiderlings are there. Anax is one of the champions who I have equipped with the blood shield accessory, so he's really strong in dealing with the Scarab King. He also has poison to decrease accuracy, so the Scarab King is less likely to provoke everyone else just because his accuracy is lowered. Rotos is there because he can destroy max HP, which just speeds up the Scarab King section. He does not have blood shield, so he'd be prone to counterattacks. Skimphos was there just to steal turn meter from the main spider, but not the spiderlings, and just again to prevent her from consuming them all the time, and just a little bit of turn media control, standard stuff for what you would do for a normal mode spider. And then I just threw in Vrask because I needed some form of healing to keep everyone else alive. And then lastly for Plagueholme stage 16, which wasn't too difficult this time around. We were taking advantage of my second Wukong. So this is my support build, and so he was useful because he could strip buffs or strip the counterattack off of the Nether Spider's minions, allowing my Nishak here to place his bombs and eventually poisons on both of them. So that was our primary form of DPS. Secondary poisons from my Celiac Priest Ornn, just like with the Baumel stage from Cobblemarket. Gear Grinder was our our primary healer and reviver in case anyone actually went down. He's built with a good amount of resistance, so he doesn't take a bunch of the poisons. And then Lonotharl provided a shield, so just a little bit reduced damage from that. And then ally attack just to help Nishak place more bombs. And then my Celiac Priest Ornn can place poisons on the A1. So helpful in that regard. So that one wasn't too hard, but anytime you can do like heal reduction is good against another spider, obviously. Cleansers are great, but in this case, my strategy was just remove the counterattacks from the minions, and then I can do whatever I wanted, essentially, after that. So moving over to Deadrise, once again, fully completed on hard, and the things I like to highlight here are the Scarab King, once again, and I completely cheesed this one, I do have to admit. Both of these champions on my account happen to be built for Dragon Hard, which means they have a good amount of high amount of resistance, like 450, and then a good amount of accuracy, 350-ish. So enough to resist the poisons of hard mode Dragon. Or Ice Golem, I think in Theodore's case, he's on my Ice Golem team. But essentially, they have really high resistance and really high accuracy, and so they're basically immune to the Scarab King's debuffs. There's no shields or anything. They just took the counterattacks. Urgrim is our healer, and again, high enough resistance that Scarab King wouldn't steal the continuous heals, and then poison with poison activation. So kind of just cheesed it, literally. So not much to say there, but I think some other people would struggle a bit more with that particular boss. And then next up, stage 15, I think, which is Baumel and hard mode Ice Golem. And so you can see here we have a little bit of HP burn activation between Drang and Drexthar. Aniri is in there for the healing, but also just the revive on death passive as well as the revive. And then I just brought in some DPS just to have some fun. So Narcisse, unfortunately, his block revive wouldn't really work on the Ice Golem minions because they would need to have 3 buffs, and they don't buff themselves, but that would have been pretty neat. And then Hoskrol is neat because he does have the stun, so he can control the minions a little bit, but primarily just kind of a little bit of HP burn damage and activation, and then just raw DPS kind of dealing with the Ice Golem side of things, or the Baumel side of things. And so lastly, we get to Soulcross, where you can see we did a whopping 3 stages before we got hard stuck by stage 6. Stage 1, it's one of those things where, like, if I had more champions built, I probably would be able to do it. Like, I think Allure is good for control. Scabrius I used to use in Faction Wars, but he's naked right now. That's why he's in the reserve vault. Fleshamonger I use for Faction Wars, so he could come in there as our decreased defense champion. Ultimate Gaelic could come in there, but I don't think he's the best nuker. I'm working on Hefrak as far as building him in a lethal set. I need another like rotation of Dark Fae to try and get more forged pieces or forged materials to make that work. And then I would probably consider running Razelvarg in a team like this if I were actually to try it. But for now, I just didn't put the effort in. I'd also probably have to book Razelvarg to really get the most out of his kit. So things where it's like legendaries that are unbuilt or unbooked, I'm less likely to try, especially when they're like the primary carries of the team. Like in this case, like Hefrak's damage would be kind of substantial as far as, you know, actually killing things. And so if I really want to do that, I'd really want him booked and I really want him geared. So I'll, you know, next time this rotation comes around or some future state, I might actually invest in him in the future. S3, one of the cases where I just do not have enough champions that qualify that can even really do anything. Kandraphone is off limits. Is I guess you guys can't see. Kandraphone is off limits for personal reasons. I'm not going to get into that. Not going to get into that one today. And then I think Bistophis, however you say it, would be pretty useful because I think he has like block active skills, AoE or somewhere or something. Yeah. Decreased defense and block active skills. So he would be very, very strong. But once again, it's just like a legendary who's unbooked and unbuilt. It could work. But in this case for Soulcross, you really kind of want 5-man teams. You can get away with it. So I just don't have enough champions to really make that one work. I guess Firegun Isbell, maybe she could be useful, but she's built, or she's going to be sacrificed for Lady Mikage. So I'm not going to have her in the future. So I'm not going to waste time putting gear on her. So Iron Twins, might as well mention it while we're here. You can see my absolutely cracked out OP team. So Pythion is the ultimate tank for stuff like this. Tuhanarok is of course super powerful. Decreased speed on the A1 is useful for slowing down the boss or preventing him from getting a bunch of turn meter, decrease attack, block buffs, etc. Nekmothar, same thing, decrease speed. Leech helps us heal, decrease attack, lets us take less damage. Venomage in there, primary DPS, just placing poisons and activating them with the A1. And then Contra was in there as a secondary Brimstone champion because we're just kind of Brimstone farming the boss. And then we get to stage 6, where I gave it a fair shake. So we'll talk about the champions that I made for this particular rotation, but majority of it is literally in this particular on this stage. So Spirit Host I've had from early game, right? She's like my Aura lead on my first ever iteration of Arena and stuff like that. So I just put gear back on her 6 starter for the first time. I built Luria as one of our DPS, but she also has a freeze, a little bit of CC. Giscard the Sigiled, I'll say that properly. The Sigiled, I think he's in a Frost set, or I forgot if I changed him or not, but he's there for another CC because he has Provoke in the kit, as well as the potential to freeze from the Frost set. Stagnite is just in a universal build, a debuffer. And then I was trying out Visionary, and I don't know, she wasn't really doing much. She's unbooked. I didn't really fully invest in her. You can see she's not even fully ascended, and it was just kind of a trial. But I was trying to see if I could reduce the damage from Leorius and the what's the other guy, the monkey Samson the Masher, just by giving them decreased crit rate, decreased crit damage, and that didn't matter all that much. They were just HP based champions in stages like this smack so hard. So I think what we really need in this collection of champions is a nice healing support or some sort of shielder. Maybe Vergis could work because he can kind of heal himself and he can ally protect for the team. But then there's also Mighty Uko, which could strip stuff off, so I'm not sure exactly if that would work. And then Fang Cleric, he can work, but it's just his kit is so bad that I just don't want to invest in him. Maybe I'll have to if I really cared about beating Soulcross, but it's just so bad. Single target revive with a little bit of a heal, and then he heals one ally. It's oh man, it's so bad. If he did more, maybe, but I don't know. I gave up. I gave this a fair shake. Like I said, I 6-starred 2 champions. I was gonna 6-star Giscard as well, just to try, but I didn't think it would make a difference. And there's only a couple days left, so I was just fine. GG's. We just don't get anywhere this rotation in Soulcross again. So yeah, I guess rotation 1, rotation 2. I never even thought about S6 or S8 being another one, being a bottleneck. And I guess I just cruised past them because I had the right champions and stuff. And so I don't know, and never was a problem before, but rotation 3 and 4 most certainly very, very difficult with the restrictions, and that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. So now let's talk about the big bad boss in the middle, and that is Amius. So we have this very interesting team, and the thing you might notice right away is, wait, who's doing heal reduction? How did this work? And you can actually see in my clan cluster, I have the fastest team, least amount of turns. This is the Blizzard solo strategy here for these guys. But you can see here, 86 turns, super fast. How on earth did I do that? It was a 4-minute run or something. And so I started off by, I built Old Gruckus, who's somewhere in here. I built him because he does have heal reduction, but he has heal reduction and decrease attack at the same time, which meant that Amius would start off with the wrong ability. He would cleanse himself and flip it to continuous heal, and then he would do the heal where you need the heal reduction. So it would start him off on the wrong rotation. and I couldn't get it to work. Even if I waited and then put it on afterward, he would still do the wrong thing when he was cycled back from the Form 2 back into Form 1, just because I'm putting it, he's trying to flip the decreased attack into increased attack is essentially what he's trying to do, which by proxy also flips the heal reduction into continued heal, which is bad. So it wasn't working. Kind of a shame, because I built Gruckus for this purpose and I booked him out and everything, and he's basically useless against Amius. So that's a shame. Shame on me. Waste of resources. But one of the things I noticed while I was just iterating on trying to make that happen was that Riho's passive. So she places continuous heal on her A1, which I would make sure to do before he flips into Form 2, and then he would flip all of our buffs into debuffs, so he'd flip her continuous heals into heal reduction, but because her passive would proc, she would reflect it onto him. So he would essentially put heal reduction on himself as long as Riho was the one with continuous heals, which would tend to be the case because for some reason she was taking the most damage. I can't really explain that. But nonetheless, she was essentially the target for that, and so he would put heal reduction on himself, and it was like a 3-turn duration, so it would last the entirety of his alternate form, and then he would try to heal himself back into Form 1 right when it was 1-turn duration, and so it would end and he wouldn't heal himself, and so it was really, really quick, and then I would just try to DPS him down in Form 1. So you can see basically Riho was like solo heal reduction champion. She's also a great healer, obviously, in this case, and also can place block debuffs to prevent us from getting stunned in Form 1. And then Ugo is backup healer and then just filled with DPS. So both of them have debuffs. Obviously, Riho has every debuff under the sun on her A2, including decreased defense, weaken, decreased attack. So that helps all of the damage dealers do damage. And then Ugo can come in whenever she has it on cooldown and place block buffs and decreased defense again, just to allow them to do damage. So again, cycling through that a couple of times, I think maybe 2 or 3 iterations of him cycling through his 2 forms, and then just literally DPSing down when the debuffs were up with Harima, Staltis, and White King Narses. So yeah, I found that pretty interesting. It was a very different solution. So now I'm going to consider, I'll pay attention more of Riho's in other iterations or other cycles of this, because that was a very cool tactic as far as getting heal reduction on the team. I ran the same thing on normal, and it didn't really work in the same way, but you can kind of see that we just had so much damage that we can kind of just overcome his heals. The other thing to mention, of course, on the team is Harima. She's like the perfect Form 2 tank. So I do happen to have her, blessed to 4 stars, which I purchased with souls over the months, which helps her just take less damage. But obviously her passive just reduces his ignore defense by half to begin with. And then you account for the fact that she's 4-star, reducing it even more. And then she's obviously high defense, so she's really great at taking damage. And so essentially, he would just tickle her in Form 2. And it wouldn't really do anything because she has I guess we can look. She has 6,000 defense or something. She's one of my best defensive-based nukers. 6,300 defense on her. And it relatively low on the HP, in fairness, at 46k, but again, the defense is so high, and then we're mitigating majority of his ignore defense, so he's hitting into a 6,000 defense, or maybe 5,000 effective defense Harima, and it tickled. So it was kind of hilarious to see that. But definitely S tier. So obviously this is the super whale version, in my case just lucky to have these champions version of this, of beating Amius. But nonetheless, I wanted to shout it out, because if you do happen to have Riho, and you can make sure that she's the one who gets her continuous heals from her A1 right before Amius flips forms, you get heal reduction for free, more or less. And that's a really innovative way, in my opinion at least, to deal with his abilities. So really quickly, we'll go through the champions that I did build. I kind of mentioned them all in passing, but I just want to highlight them specifically. So the ones that were rebuilt, meaning that I had built them at a previous instance, and then they were just naked and not doing anything, and then I put gear on them for the purposes of the Cursed City. The first one being Giscard the Sigiled. So yes, you can see here he's in a frost set, and then 2-piece stone skin for a little bit of resistance and HP. What I was thinking of doing was building him with relatively high resistance, and so I was going to go with the resistance on the banner, and then have him be able to resist the stuns from the Samson the Mashers, because he'd throw out the provoke, and then they just run in and stun him, and he was basically taken out until like for 2 turns more or less, because he was stunned. And so I wanted to try building him with enough resistance to resist that, so he can still do stuff in the meantime. Use the A1 or use the increase attack, increase defense ability of the A3, stuff like that. So that was my thought, but again, I was just running out of time with the rotation ending literally for me in another day, so it just didn't feel worth investing in him as my next 6-star champion as opposed to something else to progress on my account. The other one that was rebuilt, well, it was Spirit Host. So she's just in random gear, 2P stone skin, resilience, broken pieces. So building her with relatively high resistance, just so that, because she's the cleanser on the team, increased attack as well. So just making sure that she wouldn't get controlled. A pretty simplistic gear there. And then the ones that were freshly built, one that the one that failed me was old Gruckus here. I stripped him down because he had like really high, like he had like he had double accuracy in a perception set, so like just indexing really high into accuracy to try and land your reduction on Amius. But since he didn't work and he didn't need all of that high accuracy gear, I stripped him off and just threw him together in some random stuff. So his immortal, defense, and accuracy, it's kind of just random gear. So I think he'll still come in handy in some iterations of the Cursed City now, because again, decrease attack AoE is pretty useful. Heal reduction might be handy for something that some enemy champions that heal, like a Silva Drake's wave or something, or like a bad Alcazar wave where he puts out a bunch of continuous heals, stuff like that. So he might still come in handy, and so that's why he still has gear on. I think he'll do something for me, and I just made sure to get around 330 accuracy for the Cursed City. But again, he failed me for the purpose of Amius. Luria, she's built in some perception, some cruel, so kind of just damage nuker build, 300 accuracy enough to land it. Again, she worked very, very well. It's just that I didn't have enough follow-up after her and Giscard's CC to really do anything to get away from the first wave. And then lastly, like I mentioned, Visionary, who just has some random pieces on, some defense set, immortal set, perception set. You can always tell when I'm not trying too hard with the builds where they just kind of like, well, I have a lot of immortal from Clan Boss. I have defense set that no one really needs, and like obviously resilience is better. And it's just like, well, no one's wearing it, so, and you're not that important, so you get my defense set gear. And then perception is just kind of leftovers. But yeah, her intention again was to try and mitigate the damage from the Samson the Mashers and Leorius the Proud, and it just didn't really pan out. They would still smack me into the ground and start killing people, and I just couldn't recover. So those are the champions that I built for this rotation of the Cursed City. Some of them did work, some of them have promise, and one of them failed me wholeheartedly. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's video, recapping my progress on rotation 4 of the Cursed City. I guess one way to think about this as far as how far I've gotten is that I'm at 155 candles, if you guys want to think about it that way, over the course of 4 rotations. Again, limited severely by not being able to progress far in Soulcross, and in this rotation or the previous one is definitely hampering my progress. So like getting Carnage is, I don't even know, it's going to be like a year for me. I mean, it's really hard. I guess I'll just add this in here, that it's quite hard for me to put focus into building champions exclusively just to progress in certain stages. Like the Cursed City is important for my progression, just being here in the end game. But if I get a champion like Gizmak, for example, the mythical I got, like it's someone who I want to use for Hydra as an upgrade to something, then they get the attention and my resources because they're just more important in a higher priority area of the game. I guess Gizmak's not the best example because Mythicals are already 6-starred, but point being that I'm focusing on other areas as well. And so if it's a champion that's like super niche and they may or may not actually work in a stage based on like testing them at 5-star to see if they're really effective, it just sometimes it's just like, meh, it's not worth it. And maybe I'll come back around to it and they'll be higher up in the queue of champions to level. So we'll see what happens in the future. But yeah, I don't expect to get Carnage for a long time. And I don't expect to ever beat Soulcross hard entirely, but I would like to get somewhere out there and just kind of try out the other stages. I always like to try stuff. It's always new. It's a new challenge, and rotation 3 and 4, basically I've been boxed out of actually seeing how far I could get. So I'd like to do that more in the future when I have more resources to allocate exclusively to champions to beat some of these harder stages. But anyways, let me know how far you guys were able to get on rotation 4. Were you hard locked by stage 6 and or 8? I don't even know what stage 8 is. Is this possible? Is it magic, HP, and support? Well, it's probably possible now with a certain someone. So maybe that'd be worth trying a little harder on stage 6 in the future. But anyways, yeah, let me know in the comment section down below how far you guys are able to get in rotation 4, and also let me know what your goals are for the Cursed City. Are you just trying to beat normal? Are you trying to beat it, get as far as you can in hard? What are you trying to do in your progression in the Cursed City? As always, if you did find the video helpful, let me sure to hit that like button down below, and if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.